We will begin this meeting of the Leominster School Committee. It is Monday, August 28th. We're at Appleseed's Restaurant. The Finance Committee meeting was held at 6 p.m. This is a regular meeting of the Leominster School Committee. Would you all join in saluting of the flag, which is out there. I guarantee you, there's going to be a flag sitting here next time you're here. Okay? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to open up the open forum session of the meeting. If anyone would like to address the school committee, come to the microphone, your name and address for the record, please. Are there any scheduled speakers? We didn't do a sign. Okay, would anyone like to address the committee?
Holly Kosky. I just want to know where the meetings, I know that the meeting is put online, but the agenda wasn't this past time, so I'm wondering whereabouts that's located on the website, and also the minutes, where can I find them? Are they posted on the website, or do I have to come down to get a copy of the draft minutes? Thanks.
Thank you. We will get you an answer. Anyone else like to address the committee?
Hi, Carrie Noseworthy, 95 Smith Street. Thank you for allowing me a chance to speak tonight. As we move closer to the start of school, I was thinking that it might be nice to have some sort of meeting between parents and caregivers and the principals of the middle schools and the high school on the topic of safety. Parents, educators, and administrators all want a safe learning environment, and this is just with regards to Skyview, because there is no art band or chorus during the day. I know they have it after school. Some of the parents are concerned not just at the loss of the arts, but the lack of outlets for the kids during the day, and just sort of bringing up the saying, you know, idle hands make the devil's work, and everybody here sort of knows what that means. So no outlets plus no deans is not really a recipe for a safe environment. It would be helpful, I think, for parents and educators to have some sort of format where there's an constructive two-way dialogue, so that we can all sort of work together to help the schools in any way we can. Whether it's around ideas, volunteering time, or other ways to contribute to the district outside the box, parents and caregivers in Leominster want to know what we can do to help you guys. And as the mom of 2 children on the autism spectrum, one such sort of creative idea I was thinking about was utilizing the OTs at the schools to work with both students and staff on simple and creative ways to keep everyone engaged, focused, and finding ways to have outlets that don't interrupt the classroom. Because whether a child is on an IEP or not, OTs have a great understanding of helping children address issues around focus, nervous energy, sitting around, being still in their seat, and focus in general. And so they are something that could be utilized by the administration, and I highly recommend that they're taken advantage of. There's a lot they can bring to the table. And there's something called the sensory diet, which parents of kids on the spectrum know about. So it's basically used for kids on the...
Okay. Anyone else like to address the school committee? If so, microphone, your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, it's Catherine Gabriel, 100 Water Street. As a Leominster staff member, I spent the day today in professional development listening to Lynn Lyons discuss anxiety in our schools, which is a very appropriate topic for our school district right now. And I feel that a lot of what she said can speak to what we're working on right now as a district. In focusing on the content of our budget process, we focus on the possibility of the 40-student classroom, which ended up not becoming a problem, and the issue of auditorium lecture halls, which ended up not being a problem. All of these things built anxiety for our teachers, for our parents, and for our students coming into the school year. So focusing on the process of the whole budget process and focusing on speaking to that anxiety, recognizing that anxiety in ourselves as individuals and as a district moving forward is how we really need to focus on this. And I feel that the words of Lynn Lyons really speak to what we're working on now. This lack of communication and misinformation, as the mayor has mentioned, has been fueling the fire of the current budget problem. And Jim Joliker has the option tomorrow to speak out to the staff of the Leominster School District so that all the information of our district and our budget process is clear. Our teachers will know what schools they're coming into, what the staffing is gonna look like, and that's not always clear to everybody. So I just wanted to make that statement. As we move forward, I'm hoping that we have more open communication throughout the budget process so that more people who are getting the misinformation from the early stages of the budget process can have open access information to the correct information and open communication back and forth. The advocacy at the microphones during these public meetings has brought forth changes, and that makes a big difference. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the committee? Once again?
Carrie Neely, Day Street in Leominster. I just want to take a minute to thank each of you for your service to our city. You have done something in running for public election that few other people are willing to do. And by doing that, you've made yourselves vulnerable to criticism and attack on a personal and professional level. And I just want to let each of you know, whether you choose to run for re-election or not, the service that you have given our city is appreciated. And moving forward, I hope that we can all pull this together and make the future year much better than the embarrassment that last year was.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the school committee? Once again? If not, we'll close this portion of the meeting. Thank you all that spoke, and for all those for coming to attend our meeting. We'll now move on to communications from the superintendent.
There are no communications this evening.
Superintendent's report.
Okay, just quickly, superintendent's report. We welcome back staff today. Students are back in classes on Wednesday, August 30th. First day of kindergarten is on Tuesday, September 5th. Staff returned today to a district-wide professional development, which one of our speakers has already spoken to, on social emotional learning at Leominster High School. The district has maintained a focus on mental health awareness for the past 5 years, primarily with initiatives funded by the SHINE initiative. The day was planned by a joint professional development committee, which was teachers and administrators, and it was a huge success to all of those who participated. As mentioned, the keynote speaker this morning was Lynn Lyons, and then she also did 2 breakout sessions in the afternoon. She spoke this morning on anxiety and depression prevention, and then, as I said, broke out into 2 sessions in the afternoon with a variety of topics that the teachers pre-registered for. The PD day was a new format and a huge undertaking for the district, and we thank all those involved with making the day a success. Lynn actually is presenting right now an evening program for parents and for some students in the high school auditorium. So she continued her day by doing an additional evening program for the community. We will hold a short opening day tomorrow, and teachers will report to their buildings for faculty meetings and to prepare students who are returning on Wednesday. We just ask the general public to be aware that students are returning to schools on Wednesday, and ask the drivers take it slow and allow extra time with the school buses back on the roads. And final reminder to parents is Leominster has school on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week. We break for the Labor Day weekend, and all students will return to school on Tuesday, September 5th. So that concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. Now move on to presentations by committee and discussions. First one is transportation plan.
Okay, the Transportation Task Force, which was headed up by Heather Mazzafaro, who unfortunately wasn't able to make the meeting this evening due to a personal issue. She headed up the task force. Glenn Fratto was also on the task force, and they have their recommendations to present and discuss with the committee this evening. So I'll turn it over to the task force for their report.
Thank you. My name is Gary Zimmerman. I'm pitch hitting for Heather tonight. and I'll try to do my best because I wasn't planning for this. First, we want to thank the team that was put together and put all these recommendations together. Heather, as the chair, did a great job monitoring these meetings and chairing these meetings. We have Brandon, who's next to me. If you want to wave your hand when I call your name. Kristen showed up at the meeting. Ronnie showed up at one of the meetings. Ray, Glenn, of course, was at the meetings. Brandon, Melissa, Mike, who just came in, and myself. And there was a lot of others, and we appreciate them coming. There was a couple special guests that came that helped us transition a lot of the details around busing and things we didn't know about, so that was very helpful in these meetings. We had great debates in these meetings, discussions, but it all went well, and I think we have a good plan to present to you tonight. We passed out a presentation to you guys. The overview of this team, we were tasked by the superintendent to assist in his goal to reduce projected FY18 transportation costs by $235,000 or more. Again, the team was made up of parents, teachers, residents, school business administrator, and 2 members of the school committee, one who served as the chair of the task force. The district hired a consultant, partially funded by a grant, to review the current busing contract, the routes, the riderships, and provided recommendations. And again, we had some special guests come in and give us other information. That was very helpful. Based on our review and in light of the time constraints, the team provides the following recommendations for immediate implementation. Please note this team has agreed to stick together. I haven't decided yet, but to work through the FY18 school year, to provide additional recommendations next year and help in the budget if we can. On the next page, I thought there was page numbers, but it's not. The funding sources, FY18 projected transportation expenses were roughly $5 million. Our funding sources approved by the City Council was $3.3 million. Designated FY17 Medicaid reimbursement was a little over $1 million. McKinney Vito Bento, 58,000, closer to 59,000. And anticipated FY18 bus fee receipts, an additional 63,000. The net shortfall between expenses and current funding sources are $566,508. Now we go on to our recommendations. We have 4. I'll talk about the first 2, and then Brandon will discuss the 3rd and 4th. Our first recommendation is the busing fee change. Adding busing fee for students in grade 6. And the reason for doing this, it's the additional fees from last year and the previous years were grades 7 through 12. By applying this grade 6 to the grade 6 students, it will help the bus drivers and enforcement because the middle schools all drive on the same bus and then try to figure out which 6th graders have a bus pass and not the 7th and 8th graders or vice versa. Just makes it easier for this year. And also addition this year is the parochial school students, grades 6 through 8, will be charged a busing service. We're going to maintain the same rate this year at $100 per student and $175 max per family. Families will have until November 1st to pay this bus fee. After November 1st, students without a pass will not be allowed able to ride home on the bus. And again, one of the main things we talked about in the meeting is enforcement will be the key. You let some go and not others, it just becomes a problem. So consideration will be provided to families in need of a payment plan. Applying fee to grade 6 students will increase fee collections by approximately $10,000. And again, enforcement will be the key factor. School staff and bus drivers will be the key players in this. Economically disadvantaged families will also have options in this plan. Second recommendation, which is the big one, is reducing the fleet by 2 buses. Superintendent met with First Student Transportation administrative team. Then the task force team met with First Student representative to review options and consult recommendations. And that night was very helpful to everybody, understanding the bus routes and things. So in order to reduce the bus fleet by 2, we must maximize capacity in all the buses. That means shifting some bus routes, utilizing more appropriate bus stop locations, combining bus stop locations where possible. That night when we had the discussion, she was telling us how some of the buses going back roads just to pick up one kid, and it's a 10th of a mile walk to go to the main road, which would cut down almost 5 minutes in busing. And we understood on how fast a bus has to go from one tier to the second tier. I always wonder why they fly around. I just thought they had lead feet. It's no, they have to get to the next tier within 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and it makes it tough. And to help with that, we adjusted the bell time at Fallbrook by 10 minutes. So that will help that. By reducing this bus fleet by 2 buses, we'll save $150,000 in the busing transportation fund. All right, I'll turn over to Brandon for third and fourth.
All right, so our third recommendation was to accommodate parents who need to drop their children off a little bit earlier. So utilizing the framework that Creative Choices has set up to allow parents to drop their students off 15 minutes earlier than the last previous years at the elementary and middle school levels. By doing this, the benefits it's creating is better convenience for families. It also will reduce the morning ridership by having parents who might have not previously been able to drop their kids off at school. Now they'll be able to drop them off because of that additional 15 minutes, as well as expanding the drop-off window could reduce traffic and congestion within the city, making the buses more effective as well. Note this option is for the morning drop-off and only for grades K to 8. And moving on to the last recommendation, establishing a safety drop location. So a lot of the times in the afternoon, for the younger children, they need to be taken off the bus by a parent or guardian. And very often, the bus driver will get to the location and find that no parent is there to get their child off the bus. And what the previous practice was to call back to the dispatch, who called back to the school to find out where the parent was and when they could be there to pick up their child. They would finish their bus route, drive back, wasting a lot of extra time. So now our recommendation is to establish a safety drop location at Northwest Elementary School and have it so that if a bus driver ends up at a location where a parent isn't available to pick up their child, the bus brings the child over to Northwest where they will stay until their parent is able to pick them up. To make this work, we need to work with the school administrators and you guys on the school committee to establish the protocols and policies needed to implement this initiative as of October 2nd, as well as addressing repeated incidents where children must be transported to the safety drop-off.
Keep waiting for that 2-minute clock to go off.
It's all yours here.
This is great. No time limit. Anything else to talk about the weekend? All right, just for a summary of the recommendations, again, creating more efficient bus stops, in conjunction with First Student, they're the experts in it. They gave us some of the recommendations in the meeting. First Student bus fleet will be reduced by 2 vehicles, again, saving $150,000. Applying existing bus fee to 6th graders and the 2 parochial schools, expanding the morning drop-off window, K to 8 by 15 minutes. The safety drop, again, is a good thing to help. They were talking about the safety drops and these buses driving around, waiting for parents to be at the stop and driving around and driving around. And they said that would help dramatically, time-wise, getting, again, to the next tier. Cost reduction efforts regarding out-of-district transportation as negotiated by the superintendent. Anticipated savings there would be $175,000. So in combination with our recommendations, it's about a $325,000 savings in the busing plan, the busing fees. Again, a big thank you to the team that put all this together. I think they did an awesome job for this. I don't know if there's any questions.
So my only question is for the safety drop, that's just for kindergartners that they wait for parents, correct?
Correct, anyone that has to, and I think it's only kindergarten that has to
Okay.
have someone at the bus stop, no matter what. If they're not there, they just bring them right to Northwest.
I just want to make sure we hadn't changed the policy, or parents are going
No.
to think they have to be there, but they haven't. in the
Just
past.
whoever is required to be the weather, I mean, I don't think there's any special ed or anything in
Yeah.
that, but just kindergarten.
Okay.
Thank you. No, I think you're right.
I got all the time in the world, 'cause I'm not limited, so you
Okay.
guys can spend it.
Okay, I just have a couple of quick questions. I just want to be clear, so I know it talks about options for economically disadvantaged, but I just want to make sure that I understand that we're still keeping the fee, nothing for free and reduced lunch. That's one of the things that I wanted to double check.
Yep.
At this point in time, it's too late to try and move. That's why they want to maintain the current fee there are. If students are eligible for free or reduced lunch, they will be eligible to be transported
Okay,
as they have in the past,
okay, at least for this year,
at least for this year.
okay.
Yeah, we did try, because every meeting we had is like, school's just around the corner, we can't, we had a bunch of other things we had ideas for, but due to the time constraints, we tried to keep it as simple and as best we could before the school year.
And then, really quick, the 15-minute window with creative choices, are we charging for that time?
Yes.
Okay,
Not this-
No, if they have a bus pass.
The recommendations of the committee were ameliorated slightly when it was presented to the district leadership team.
for you,
It went from 30 minutes to 15 minutes.
okay.
It went from requiring parents who drop their children off early to have a bus pass to, not this year, it's just.
It's just 15
No, it's
minutes.
15
Okay.
minutes.
And then the last
And
thing,
One other thing is, I'm going to share this. Very few instances at the district leadership team where people clapping, they love the idea of the safety drop.
okay,
Because it eliminates the amount of time that school personnel have to sit and wait for an all clear.
right, okay, and then that was my last thing, so I guess we need, it sounds like from this recommendation, we need to get the, this safety drops up on the policy subcommittee, like, for our next meeting, so Jim, can you make
Yep.
sure that's, thank you.
Yeah, because we did talk about, again, I guess there's some things about if the parent's not there for 3 times, something
Right,
happens.
so we'll address that
and
in
they-
policy subcommittee,
Correct.
so I'll make sure it's on the next agenda for our first meeting.
Perfect, thank you. No?
Next,
Oh, and thank you.
the bus routes,
Yes.
the ones that have been posted, are those the new bus routes that are more efficient?
Yes.
Or- okay, so-
What had happened in one of the meetings too, we knew, the bus schedule we met on Tuesday, the bus schedule had to be out by Friday. So we made some decisions that the bus had to go forward. And again, it wasn't anything major, we're not picking up at every, driveway in some cases, and we let first student decide the best thing to make this time fly by.
Okay. Next thing was, after November 1st, students are going to be told they can't ride the bus. Who's going to be
Home.
monitoring? Yes.
go to
Who's
school.
going to be monitoring that, since we have no deans that used to do that job?
We don't figure out the logistics, we just do the
I'm
recommendations.
just- I'm just
No,
going.
You want to know
again, it
the
is a
time.
hard, it's just like the charging, it's figuring out who does it. I mean, we don't know the staff, at some points, we don't know when the staffing is or who can do it, but there's got to be an implementation and an enforcement of this to make things work.
Right.
But again, that's something the schools, the principals are going to have to relay
So-
back up and say, this isn't working.
So with the savings that you anticipate, that still leaves us with $241,508 short.
Correct. Yeah, we were
Repeat that
tasked.
figure?
Hmm?
Repeat that.
$241,508 short. So we need to find that.
And we are going to send an official letter to the city letting them know that's what our deficit is for busing.
Okay. Thank you for your hard work. I think this is really good. You guys really worked hard in getting it down to this, and I appreciate that.
Well, we went way above our number. We were asked for 235, and with the superintendent's help with the special ed, we were 325, so we did good.
Good job.
We don't have a minus sign.
This is what happens.
You didn't ask for the
when
whole thing. You just-
This is what happens when we don't time you.
That's good. yeah.
So we appreciate all of the efforts of the Transportation Committee because certainly we know that this is a very difficult and sensitive subject for many of the community members. What I just wanted, some of my questions have already been answered, but I just wanted to make sure that word has gotten out to all the parochial students because in the past they had not, been charged a fee, so I want to make
yeah.
sure that they had gotten.
They have been charged
Yeah, they
today,
have
which
been.
is something that I was
Okay,
gonna
they were?
say. They've always paid.
Oh, we were
They've
told at the
always
meeting, they're not,
No,
or
they've
either that,
always
it's not
paid. In
collected.
Okay.
fact, they've always had it in on time.
Okay, so it's
So-
just the sixth graders that they need
Right.
to know as well as our families.
Although I think they were told that all students being transported at their Title I meeting are gonna be charged.
Well, there was one point we wanted to charge every grade.
Yeah.
And then,
Right. Okay, well,
again,
that
due
must
to,
be
due
the-
to time and implementation, it wasn't feasible to do that this year. Next
Okay,
year,
so that
maybe,
might be
we don't
something
know.
we do in future
Right.
years.
Correct.
And we still have a cap for a family, so I think
Yeah.
that's.
And that was the hard part, I think sometimes is our misinformation, whether we heard in our meeting, the parochial schools were not charged.
No.
So that was,
Last year.
yeah.
No.
Okay,
All right,
so,
okay, that's good.
go ahead, let's keep going.
I wanna make sure that the charging of grade 6 is permissible statutorily, because the law says that we are mandated to transport K through 6. So now we're saying, wait a minute, if you're in grade 6 and you can't afford the fee, we're not transporting you. I'm not sure that's
Well,
legal.
if they can't afford the fee, then they can
No,
find
but
another
I'm just
thing,
saying in
but-
general, I think you need
Well,
to, somebody
correct
needs
me
to
if
check
I'm-
that legally.
Correct me if I'm
Because-
wrong.
All right, let's get, hold on.
Fitchburg charges.
Charges, other places charge everyone.
Well, but everyone versus a select group, in other words, right, if you charge everyone, that's fine. But what we're saying now is the law says that we must provide transportation for grades K through 6.
Right.
And now we're saying, but we're only gonna charge 6. So you're excluding
That doesn't
a
seem like a
group.
legal issue, though.
Well, but look at the law, I think.
But if other districts are charging K through 12,
Right, but that's everybody. Now we're saying this group that's included in the law that we're mandated to provide transportation.
Yep.
We're saying out of that group we're mandated, well, we're
But you're
going
charging
to.
everybody in grade 6.
Right, right, that's.
charge everybody.
Yeah.
Right. they-
That's
we
our,
charge
that was the
Well, I'm
original
saying that you're
plan.
excluding, yeah, right, you're not, what is
right.
it? You're
We're just trying to
not
make it easy for the
consistent.
enforcement
And so I'm
this
just
year.
saying to bring it up, I think you should just run it by somebody
We-
because.
Consider it a law expansion.
This was this is one of the initial recommendations of the transportation consultant who knows the laws. You are mandated to provide a transportation opportunity to all students K to 6. It doesn't mean they don't have to contribute towards the cost of that. And most districts that charge a fee charge grades 1 to 12. This group wanted to make that recommendation, but they realized, in essence, given the time constraints, that let's just go from 6 to 12, because the middle school starts at grade 6. So charging middle school and high school students for this coming year is what the recommendation is.
Okay, and I'm just saying the class of grade 6, I would just like confirmation that that's legal. Not charging, well, charging them and not the other group. I understand you can do all or none, but we're not doing all or none, we're doing partial.
Yeah, I don't know who the school committee has for legal counsel.
Okay,
but
well,
they can check
Mike, can
that.
you find the answer to that and just email us, or the superintendent could put on his weekend, his week's ends sort of notes, reflections. Ron, did you have anything?
No, I really do commend their hard work, because I was there at a couple of meetings, and there was a lot of stuff that was hashed out, a lot of arguing being done, and, we do have to change some things, sometimes against our will. So there was a lot of hard work involved, I think.
Glenn, when things, if they ever settle down, I think it's an appropriate time to notify the other school districts if they're interested in going out to bid with us. You know, we missed the opportunity to go, I mean, we went to bid very late in the year, and there are some things that we can do to change the bid specifications, and one of them is to try to get other school districts to bid. Now, how much, you know, again, to them, it's a science. It's per bus, this is a science
Per
or
bus.
formula farm. But there are things in there like the age of the buses versus you'd have to pass an inspection. I mean, if you can pass an inspection on a bus, then, I mean, it's pretty hard to pass inspection for anything today. All inspections from now on are gonna be videotaped. So there's very little way to get out of anything anymore. So, you know, when you tell the bus company you have to have a 2-year-old bus, that's reflected in the cost
It is.
of transportation. So those are the things that we need to look at down the road. But I would say just a simple letter to other school districts in the area saying, have any interest at all in working with us? They're all in the same situation. And this is when people sort of regionalize or get together is when, you know, by economics forces people into cooperating with each other. And this, and there are some other areas in there, well, I don't have to get into them tonight, but some other areas that we could make changes in that would save us money in the long run.
And that's why I think this team wanted to stick together. I mean, we were under time constraints, and that's why, I mean, we got along pretty good in the meetings, and
Well,
all showed up, but that's
some of us get along
okay.
better than others.
But those are the ones we want to have.
So the one thing I'd say is, so we don't lose, because this happened to us last year too, when it happened to us again this year, although with many more games, put together a time frame for April, May, you know, when the budget process happens, so we can implement more of these things if they deem feasible and workable and, you know, if it works out. So we can implement it with plenty of time for parents to know what to do for next September.
I think Heather, and I'll announce it here, I think she said she'd still chair the meeting. So that's good, and when we meet, maybe we'll have a little plan that we can present to you, or just pass out to your email to you saying April, May, some time
Just
frame.
don't
We'll try
forget
to
about
get input from everybody, because there's people that know ways to do things better, going out for bid or whatever. We don't always know that in the meeting, so.
And one other question that I forgot. Do we have any stops that are being eliminated that are going to prevent a child from coming to school, that are going to force a parent to,
The only stops we recommended and took away were on Washington Street,
There
not
was
Washington.
6 stops on Merriam going towards
Merriam.
Northwest that we were able to eliminate because they were all within 4/10 of a mile of Northwest, because the city installed sidewalks. So
No.
those students now have a safe path to and from school. But in order to reduce by 2 buses, we reduced the fleet by 7%. We eliminated about 6 or 7% of the stop by consolidation. We don't know of anyone who won't be able to bring their child to school. At this time, the committee is not recommending enforcing.
well, I'm thinking
walk
some of
zones.
the people that I know there was a family that lived out there.
Oh. We're looking at alternatives.
Okay.
Less expensive alternatives than sending a bus out there.
Right,
We have some.
okay, I just,
I can talk to
Yeah,
you
but
separately about those.
Any outside of walk zone, we did not eliminate completely like a bus stop. We may have shifted it to a different
Right,
location. But other than those ones off of Merriam and Pennington.
If I may, the committee worked very, very hard. I mean, there are a whole bunch of people in this audience who are part of that committee. And they want to get the recommendations to the school committee as soon as possible. We need to let people know if we're going to be sending them, or they have to pay a transportation fee. We need to let them know if we're going to offer the 15-minute early drop-off. We can still work on the safety drop. But if I may, if you could approve the recommendations with the condition subject to legal opinion that we can't charge 6th graders. I have met with the administrators for the 2 parochial schools regarding the fee. We'll just clarify what's chargeable to. But we need to move ahead with this.
I just have one other question. Are you still transporting students that live under a mile? What is it? Under a mile and a half? Because that was another issue that we talked about, so.
Same walk zone as previous years at
They've
this
changed
point.
it. In some of the situations, the students, we are not enforcing your walk zones.
Okay.
It would affect too many students at this time, and it's more consideration.
So that might be an opportunity, though, for the next round of.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
we've talked about
okay,
it.
okay.
Wendy, last
I-
question, and then
yeah.
somebody needs to make a motion.
Yeah,
and you
no,
have
I
the
just
other
wanted to
debate.
clarify something for people listening, because there was a phone number and extension set up for the person. So if there's if something was overlooked and a stop was eliminated that maybe shouldn't have been because it's in a dangerous spot, there is somebody now at what is the extension downtown?
350.
360.
315.
315.
315. So, if something did get missed and a stop that maybe shouldn't have been eliminated was, at least now there's a direct contact person that they can, and I just want to make sure that was known.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations from the Transportation Task Force. Second.
There's a second by Suzanne. Any other questions, comments? If not, all in favor? Signify in the usual manner. Those opposed? Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to extracurricular activity fees.
Okay, in the package, I provided a memorandum regarding a revised recommendation for the extracurricular fee to find whether the committee was still interested in pursuing the fee. We revised it to $75 per student and $25 per student free and reduced lunch. It's really hard for us at this point to be able to project what the total fees would be coming in, only because in most cases, students take advantage of multiple extracurricular activities. And so there's crossover, and we've really never collected that type of data. We would be able to do that type of data activity during the course of the year.
And you're talking about one fee for the entire year as opposed to each activity?
Yes, one fee per student for the entire year, yes. So the fees would be charged for activities that are associated with stipends that are currently in the teacher's contract, the Leominster Ed Association contract. And we would primarily use the revenue from the fees to kind of offset some of that, some of the stipends that are paid to teachers. So I attached some spreadsheets for the committee just to kind of take a look at so you knew the type of activities, primarily being sponsored at Leominster High School Center for Technical Education Innovation on this particular campus, and at the two middle schools, Skyview and Samoset. One committee member did raise one activity to my attention, so we'll make sure that we bring that and get it onto the list, because it was more of the youth venture teams, so we want to make sure that we included that.
What about the Gay Straight Alliance? I didn't see that in there.
I noticed that one this morning, that
should
we
be
had
in.
approved that, and it was left off of the Samoset, so we'll make sure that gets back on. So it's really now whether the committee is interested in pursuing this for this particular school year. As the Transportation Task Force suggested, we would not collect immediately. We would have a later collection date on these fees, since this decision is being made as we begin the school year. Or we can enter the school year and collect the data so we know more of the activity of the students, but we would have to understand that without some revenue coming in to offset the stipends, that we might have to further limit the amount of activities that we can actually hold in each of the schools. So
I would like to make a motion to accept the activity fee of $75 per student per year and $25 per student who receives free and reduced lunch. And there's always opportunities to negotiate those fees if a family has any financial difficulties. But just to start for this year.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is second. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
All right, Nona was first, then Wendy,
Yeah.
then Suzanne. Go
I
ahead.
had a tough time with this because I think this was brought up to us without a lot of time to look into it. I think we need to, the previous listing that we had from other school systems, I'd like to contact those other school systems that kind of match ours and ask some more questions about their fees, like how they use their fee.
Although I think we've been clear how we would use the fee to offset the stipend.
I still,
And, I mean, I think we've been charging sports for many years now. I think it's only fair for other
I'd like to find out
opportunities.
from the advisors at the start of this start of this year, how many kids are actually involved this coming year in these different clubs. You know, to look here on this and say that, you know, senior class, there's 400 kids. Well, yeah, there's 400 kids in the senior class, but not all of them participate in the senior class activities that are working, that would want to, you know, be assessed a fee. The same with the junior class, the sophomore class, and the freshman class. I'd like to see more data before I vote on this.
Okay, Wendy was next, and then Suzanne.
I have a minor concern with the activities that we're going to be charging with. For example, if chorus and band after school is considered an activity at the middle school level that would kick in a fee, it would be an unfair charge on the kids at Skyview because they were not able to get this in during the day. So the only option is to have it after school. And the Samoset kids will have it during the day. They were able to work that. So I would like to know if things like that will be taken into consideration when picking, you know, assigning the fees to which activities are part of that. Like if a kid's only doing band and chorus and can only do it after school because it couldn't fit in the day, I don't think we should be charging for that.
Okay, Suzanne?
Okay, my question's along that line. So I raised a question because I was approached by a parent about the band. And the question was answered, saying that the teacher gets paid during the day. It would be considered double dipping if he got a stipend during the day. But supposedly the stipend is for his after hours. But regarding what you just said about one of the chorus in one school is during the day, so why would we be paying a stipend for that? Or we wouldn't be.
No, you
Well,
would.
no, but the
It's
other
for after
schools
school.
couldn't fit it in the daytime schedule.
Right.
So if they're going to have it, it's going to be an after-school
But
activity.
the other school has it after school as well.
Right, but, well, once, in other words, I'm concerned about the double dipping. I mean, there's clearly activities that are done during the day, and maybe there's an extension of them after school, so I think we need to be careful on, you know, what we're paying stipends for. You know, we're saying it's for these extra curricular activities, but some of those extracurricular activities are part of the school day.
Right,
That's-
and that,
I
I mean, that's the
think
superintendent's
important.
function, is to decide, to figure all that out. I mean, if somebody's getting paid on one end to do a certain function, and then there are extra function, you know, extra sort of expectations, then that needs to be compensated, and I think that's the question.
But it has to, right, but I
And
think we
somebody
need
has to define the definition of extracurricular, and in this case, if it's, you define extracurricular, if it becomes an extracurricular activity, then you have to pay,
Right,
right?
so in the context of the band though, you know, I was told the band boosters raised all this money, and there were a couple other clubs that
But they
raised
don't,
money.
but they don't pay for the stipends.
Right, but what do they pay for? Again, we're going back to
Trips
that
to
whole
Florida.
other.
They usually pay for their competitions,
They-
to go
trips to
places
Florida.
and,
Equipment, et cetera.
yeah. It's the same
Okay.
thing like with the sports, how most sports have a booster fee associated on top of the athletic fee to
You're
do the
raising
extra
money.
stuff.
So
Because I thought about the band too, but I think that they don't cover the stipend for
No, they don't.
Barry or whomever.
That,
or
yeah,
whoever.
but that's the high school level. The one that
Right, no, I
my
agree.
concern
No,
was
I
the
agree.
middle
No,
school.
I agree with you on
Because
that,
that's
yeah.
a mix
Yeah.
of, some kids, they just can't fit it in their academic day.
Yeah, that's on us, that's not on.
Right, so I don't
student.
think the middle
Right.
school, specifically the middle school kids who would have taken, at Skyview, who would have taken band and chorus during their day, a couple of days a week, if they want it, now they have to do it after school, so I don't think we should consider that an extracurricular.
And then the committee just, through the chair, the committee would just have to consider that students might also be involved in other activities, so even
Right,
though
but
they
what I
might
mean
be
is if that's their
involved.
only activity.
If
we
that's the
should-
only activity, then I think we have to isolate that, you're correct.
Yes.
Can we find out how many students that is, rather than?
Right.
I wouldn't want to say, you know, we're not going to charge, and then there's
No, I
50 kids,
understand,
and
yeah.
then now we're,
Yeah.
you know, that's substantial.
That's
So
where I-
if it's- If
That's
it's,
where I would-
let's find out how many, and then.
It's
I'd like
about
to recommend
40
that we
kids
table
at the
this
middle
until we
school.
have more information.
That's
Well,
where
I don't know,
was-
do you need a vote tonight, or what's it
I
going?
think we should have, I mean, I don't think
Subject to
we
anything
need,
you
but I
want,
think we
but,
should, because parents, I think, need to know
They need
as
to
soon
know
as
the
possible.
information. Right.
And it might affect our offerings. So to me, I think it's very important, so I mean, there's a motion and a second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any other questions?
Just, okay, so on advisors, class advisors, are they getting a stipend paid for by all students? How does that work?
I think once.
They're on the list.
Yeah, I think once again, it's going to be whether it's a student that's isolated in that one activity. Usually, these students are involved in band, they're class advisors, they're involved in National Honor Society, et cetera. The class advisors, those are typically paid anyways, because we need those
So
people
those are not,
those would
okay,
not be
so you're not gonna
included in-
charge every
No,
senior?
no.
Okay, so
No.
maybe we should just skim through this, but.
Yeah, no,
okay.
we'll differentiate that. I just needed the guidance as to how the committee wanted to proceed so that we could get the other legwork done, so.
Okay.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the
Before you go
floor.
any further.
Yes, sir.
I would like to have this motion tabled, because I'd like to have it piggybacking on Nona's statement. I'd like to have it evidence-based. How many kids are going to each
I don't think
activity?
we're gonna know that.
We're not gonna know
We're
that
not gonna
one.
know that.
Right.
Can I say something? We
Immediately.
voted last meeting
Right.
to
Yes, we
implement a
did.
fee.
We did.
So I
Right.
think this is actually we're
It is. It's a
reducing the
reduction.
fee.
It
We're
is.
reducing
Some people
the
had
fee.
said they didn't understand what the fees were for, so this is just an explanation of
Yeah,
that.
right,
But it's okay, because there's a motion and a second on the floor, I guess. But, I mean, somebody would have to rescind, somebody would have to change their mind from the last vote to make a recommendation to rescind the vote, to then change it to delay it. So I think the only changes that we're here to make tonight are,
That we've agreed on the fee structure.
Correct.
And I hope the superintendent, I mean, you'll use your judgment with the middle school and for anything else that's.
Yeah, the exceptions we have to deal with, yes, yeah.
and there will be. So,
Vote?
motion and a second, all in favor? Those opposed? Okay, thank you. So we have some other points of clarification here. You wanted to go over them real quick, Superintendent, in terms of what the areas are of clarification?
Yeah,
So-
the areas right now I have is the situation with the band up at the middle schools, only because we aren't going to be able to offer band band primarily at Skyview Middle School, at least for the time being. If we are able to offer, it will be an after-school, so we're going to have to isolate that. Stipends such as class advisors, et cetera, which are technically positions that we have every single year in order to provide the guidance to the students during the course of the year. We'll isolate that, and we'll just look into the differentiation of the band activities at the high school, so.
I'd include National Honor Society.
National Honor Society
Class
also,
advisors.
okay, yeah.
Although there's a certain number of people who make National Honor Society, so, and who are in that, so I think that's a solid number.
Right. The,
Not everybody.
I just have another question, it's
Sure.
more of a logistics. So if there was somebody from the community that wanted to offer an extracurricular activity and after-school program, do we have a policy on how we would accept that if somebody wanted to come in? So in other words, there's no cost to the school department, but somebody wants to come in and it's up to them to sort of raise the money for the fees if there are going to be. But if somebody wanted to come in and offer astronomy, and they can get 6 to 10 kids to come in and either pay something or not, would they be allowed to do that? What's that?
They'd have to be quarried.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to meet the same standards, but,
Right.
I mean, we're offering that to, basically, we're paying somebody an extra stipend to offer an after-school program. So,
I think the only word of caution there is in regard to the teachers' union, where a lot of these stipends are negotiated into the contract, would have to make sure we pass that by the union, so.
well, if we're offering, if we're offering that to the union, but I'm just saying, if somebody wanted to come in and offer an after-school program, is there something in the contract that said it has to specifically be?
No,
given
not
to?
if it's
I
a,
ran a Lego program a few years
That's
ago.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think the rec department used this company, whoever they
Right,
were.
they
came
participate
in
Private
for
company,
the
yeah.
student.
Yeah.
I think
Cory
we
check.
wanted to make, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
We
they
just
were.
made sure that it's not in competition with
current
the teachers,
No,
you
no,
know,
I'm
but
saying-
nobody else was offering.
I'm just saying, this
So,
is in addition,
Yes.
yeah, in
Yeah,
addition
right.
to negotiate.
in addition to, because
Yeah.
we have all this
Yeah.
space and they have all these buildings.
And parents
And
want after
we're
school
trying to
stuff.
keep kids
Yeah.
busy and keep it doing productive things. And these don't have to be year-round or even 6 months. These could be a 3-week program or a 6-week program,
It was 6 weeks.
whatever.
Well, there was a woman who came in over the last couple of years at Francis Drake. She did it 1 to twice a year, depending on the interest of the kids, and she was a parent of a student, so she wasn't a staff member, but she did a class on like circuitry and taught the kids.
Coding.
Yep.
Yes, and she charged for the materials, and so whoever wanted to signed up, and she had a number she could take, but this was an activity offered at the school, after school, and it was not through, and it just didn't compete with an already existing activity.
Yeah, so I think we should promote that. We should get that word out to the community, that if somebody would like, it might be a business or a company that either wants to sponsor somebody to come in, or maybe they want to come in and sort of do it themselves. And if that's the case, then we should, we should get that public, and we should try to encourage people to take advantage of that opportunity. We have, all these buildings with all of these classrooms, and, we're all trying to get to the same thing. The other thing is the auditorium. The auditorium was heavily used prior to the renovation. Everyone seemed, and the renovation took 2 years. So that if you were to build an auditorium like that, you're talking millions of dollars. It's really underutilized by the outside world, other than what we use it for. I know the church uses it for Sunday services, but we really need to start promoting that, because I think that's another additional revenue source for us. It was nice to actually go to the students' summer band camp.
Yeah.
And it was air conditioned, rather than, because it always seems to be the day that's 90+ degrees.
It was cold.
It was actually quite comfortable in a shirt and tie. However, there's a valuable resource that we have here as a community, and we should get that out. We lost a lot of the dance groups who left to go other places because they couldn't use it, and they've not come back. And it's really in a convenient location. I mean, there was no other facility like that where you can come off the highway in a couple of minutes and use it. I mean, it holds 1,000 people. It's a big venue, so I think that's another source of revenue that would help us to either establish a fund where money we take in, we put back into it in maintenance or whatever. Chair breaks here, it took 30 years to break every chair, but we never had any money to put back into it. So that might be a good revenue source. A few other things is, Nona reminds me every year about the Code Red, to remind everyone that we're on a different schedule, and you're gonna be behind buses, and you need to have extra time, so the police department will put out Code Red.
Thank you.
Every parent's responsibility is to send their child rested, fed, and ready to learn. That's every parent's responsibility. It's pretty simple. Those are the things. Leave them off at the door stop here at the curb, and the rest is magic. It happens. And if anyone's having trouble with any of those areas, we are certainly set up to help people and refer them to as many resources as there are, and there are lots of them.
And we do have 3 schools now that qualify for
Yes,
breakfast.
universal
Yes, we do.
For
So,
everyone.
again,
And
rested-
those are Northwest, Johnny Appleseed, and Francis Drake.
Francis Drake, yeah.
Again, rested, fed, and ready to learn. That's every parent's responsibility, regardless of the situation. You bring them here, you leave them off, and the magic happens. Another reminder, these are institutions for learning, and I think sometimes we forget. That's what is supposed to go on here. And I hear these stories about a whole lot of things, and we welcome everyone to come to the school, but this is a place for learning. That's exactly why these buildings are here. There needs to be clear expectations. I say this everywhere. Everyone needs to understand each other in terms of students need to understand what they can expect from staff in the school, vice versa. Same with staff, they need to know what's expected, and then also the parents. Everyone needs to understand what their part and role is in public education. These are great schools, and I know we didn't get one good article written in the newspaper, I don't think, all summer long. Yet, we have remarkable schools with great teachers, great facilities. These are some, I traveled all over the state to look at facilities this summer. We have some of the best facilities there are. And I would just footnote that the state has now stepped in. The cost of construction is over $560 per square foot. The state has stepped in and limited the cost of building new schools. So whereas somebody might say, well, getting 75% reimbursement, that 75% reimbursement is probably like 40% reimbursement now, or probably 50% at most. So everyone is having to take another hard look at this. They've capped it, I think, I want to say $361 per square foot. If you go over that, you own it. Simple as that. We invested in our schools at the exact right time. Is anybody going in for new projects right now? The cost is doubled, and your reimbursement is probably half of that. So the tough decisions are going to have to be made in other communities to either go forward or not, but those are the new rules. October numbers, it's really important that everybody understands system-wide, those October numbers are critical. They don't have an effect on us this year, but it is our numbers that we get from the state is going to use those numbers to decide what will be our net school spending numbers, but also what is going to be our assistance from the state. So if we're off by 20 kids, roughly $10,000 is costly. You get up around 100, that's $1 million off that we won't have for next year's school budget. So it's really critical that, and I know Glenn's been working and everyone's been working to make sure that, everyone is counted. Whether you have to give them an ice cream or some incentive for being there for the day, it's really critical that they be there. I remember Dr. Rapper gave every kid an ice cream because he just understood. It's really important. That one day decides what your funding is for the next year. As bizarre as it may seem. And so everybody should be counted on that day as they should be every day. So anything on approval of minutes? Do we have any minutes to approve?
Yeah, there's one.
All right.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of July 31st,
Okay.
2017.
Second, any questions, errors, omissions? If not, all in favor? Those opposed? Okay, new or old business? Anything on the new or old business? Nona and then Wendy?
I have three things. One, could we get the Sims data for the end of the year?
Sims data for the end of the year. Yep.
You know how we get I've asked for October
Yep.
1 report? We could get the same type of report, but at the end of the year, this past year. I think that'd be helpful in comparing. The high school has a new dismissal policy that I think we need to approve of and have it put in the handbook on, you have to have your note in by 7:30 in the morning, but now they're not taking any phone calls. You have to, and the parent or guardian has to come into the school to get their child, which I think is a good idea. And then just a concern, I didn't know if she was gonna show up tonight or not. She thought she might, but she called me just as I was walking out the door. Apparently, a teacher at Francis Drake, they were here for the meeting, the workshop today, which they thought was excellent. But they were told they could go back to their school and be in their classroom from 3 to 9:30. When they got there, the custodian was locking the door because the other custodian had not shown up. So they couldn't go in and set up their classroom. So that's a concern, and I think those teachers were a little upset that they weren't able to get into their classrooms.
Thank you.
Okay.
My
Wendy, did you
issue was
have
actually the last one that Nona brought up, because a lot of those teachers had made childcare arrangements for their own children so they could set up their classrooms today and were booted out of the building, so I just was gonna bring that up.
Well, they weren't booted out, they weren't
They
able.
weren't allowed in.
No, well, some had gotten there just,
did they?
and were
Yeah.
in and were told they had to leave.
Did somebody call the superintendent's office to let them know? I mean, I'm sure we could get somebody.
No, I would have, I didn't know about it.
I have
so.
no idea, like I said, it
You
was
knew
just,
later.
the phone
Yeah.
call was
Yeah,
just
but
as I was walking
And I got a couple
out.
of phone calls
Okay.
too, that's.
Right, so I guess, for folks to know, that would be important to let the superintendent know
Right.
if something
Right.
like that happens, so it
Yeah.
can be rectified.
And just a reminder, we do have a meeting next Tuesday. Does everybody have that on their schedule?
Yes.
Glenn Kuchar,
Glenn Kuchar.
Mass Association of School Committees is coming out. We're going to talk about the role of a school committee member in the budgeting process, how to develop a budget. So that's an important meeting. And in speaking with Kristen on the budget process, we'll start very early in the process. This is step one. Really get into the process as we go through the fall. But the real work will start intense work will start in January, when the governor's budget is out. We know then pretty much what the budget's gonna be, and although we wait for the, the Senate and the House, that really doesn't change drastically, so we wait a whole lot of time for those numbers, because we're trying to get, the best numbers possible, but I think it's safe to go on the budget, on the budget, on that. We'll know, or at least an expectation of what our insurance numbers are, at least, if we use 8% increase and it's 6, then that's good, but at least, we have something to begin with, to work on, and we'll know our anticipated revenues fairly early on, so our budget process can not wait till the end anymore. It really can move quite quickly. And as I said, I think with a better understanding of everybody in terms of what everybody's role is in the budget process and how to develop a realistic budget based on anticipated revenues is really what's going to drive the budget, and I think not end up in the situation that we did last year, which was not a fun experience for anybody. So the first step is Tuesday, September 5th at 7 o'clock. Okay. Anything else in the new old business? The other thing is that we had the highest attendance of all summer programs in every area, from the YMCA to the Boys and Girls Club, to the Recreation Department, the School Department. Everyone that ran summer programs had the highest attendance ever. So that is a clear indication of things for extracurricular activities. Economy's better, means more working families, more logistical things where people are crisscrossing the city and taking care of elderly parents and neighbors, and that is probably an indication of a whole lot of things. And that's why I sort of said, if there's an opportunity to expand our programs, even if it's a Boys and Girls Club that needs more space to come into our schools, if they can offer other programs that are more and more convenient locations, and keep, another 10 kids busy and off the streets, that's a good thing.
Superintendent, we usually get a report at the beginning of the year how the summer school session went, so if you could.
We have it
jot that
scheduled
down.
for the second meeting in September.
Great, thank you.
Okay, if not, there are no other items to come before the school committee. We thank everybody for coming with us tonight. As you know, it's getting darker. I had no
Already.
control over that, but suddenly it's gone from 9 o'clock to 7 o'clock at night that it starts to get dark. So extra caution and safety is critical. It's start getting darker in the morning, and so school session's in. People need to slow down and be careful. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just, Chris,